And welcome back to the show. Hunger Solutions New York is a statewide not-for-profit organization that's actually dedicated to alleviating hunger. They strive to maximize participation in and support for federally funded nutrition assistance programs, as well as focusing their efforts on the most vulnerable populations, including children, seniors, veterans, and people with disabilities. Joining me now and sharing more and discussing the work that goes on is the Director of Communications and Public Affairs at Hunger Solutions New York, Sherry Tomasky. And Sherry, good to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad to be part of today's conversation.
Yeah, so when we talk about the work that you do, please just give a little more background. I think I gave a little intro, but for somebody who may not know, please take a little time to introduce us to the organization.
Sure. Well, as you said, we're a statewide organization. We're based a little north of where you are. We're up in Albany, but our services go across the state. And we are focused on making sure that everyone who is eligible in New York State has access to federal nutrition assistance programs. So those are programs such as SNAP, WIC, which is the Women, Infants, and Children's Program. We focus on access to school meals as well as summer meals for children, and the Child and Adult Care Food Program, which provides meals to children in daycare and after school programs. So our goal is to make sure that for all of those programs for which people are eligible, they know about the program, they know how to access the program, and they're able to use the program to put more food on the table for themselves and their families. And we think that that's one of the most important ways to fight hunger here in New York State.
When you talk about hunger in New York State, very important because we know that COVID has further exacerbated what's going on and the issue of food insecurity. Give us a little bit of your perspective of how you see food insecurity across the state, particularly at a time like now.
Sure. Well, COVID definitely has shed a lot of light on hunger and food insecurity, not only in New York State, but across the country. And what I think has happened too is it has broken open a lot of the disparities that were previously there, but have also gotten much worse during the pandemic. For example, households with children are actually much more likely to experience food insecurity than households without children. We also know that households with Black and Latino residents are also more likely to experience food insecurity. And so we've seen disparities in that way get much worse, where the burden is actually much greater on those more vulnerable populations than they had been. And I think all of that is pointing to the need for more attention on both emergency food programs, as well as making sure that we have a really strong safety net in terms of SNAP and WIC and other federally funded nutrition assistance programs as well.
And so as we talk about food insecurity, it's a huge issue that's across the state, a huge issue across the country. And I know there's a great push to really get our elected officials to really intervene and be involved. Talk about the work that's being done that's really addressing that from a governmental perspective and the advocacy.
That's a very good point. And I do think that without government intervention, hunger and food insecurity would be so much worse than it is right now. We strongly believe that many of the relief efforts that were put in place by Congress and here in New York State avoided a much worse hunger crisis than we may have seen otherwise. So even though the data shows that food insecurity has gone up, especially among vulnerable populations, it has not gone up as much as it otherwise would have without the immediate help that Congress and the state put into place. So at the federal level, one of the things that we're focused on right now is to urge our members of Congress to pass the Buildback Better Act, because it has several provisions in it that are going to help bridge the gap for many children, specifically in New York and across the country, in terms of hunger and food access. Specifically in this legislation that is being considered right now, there are provisions that would allow for greater access to school meals for children who may not meet the current income requirements for free meals, but may not live in a household that can afford to pay for lunch at school every single day. Now, in New York City, this program has been in place for several years now, where all public school students are eligible for free breakfast and lunch at school. But that is not true in many districts in upstate New York and in Long Island. So under the federal provision, we could fill a lot of those gaps by expanding access to free meals for many more children under those provisions in the federal law. And this is something that we've been advocating for quite some time, but the pandemic has really demonstrated why school meals are such an important part of each and every day for children, especially low-income children who may not have regular access to healthy food at home. So that is the main reason why we're pressing for passage of the Buildback Better Act, because it will help so many smaller, more rural districts in different parts of New York State bring access to those meals to children. But there's also some other provisions in that bill that would benefit children across the state, including children in New York City. And that would be a summer EBT program for any child who's eligible for free or reduced price school meals. In this legislation, there would be a $65 benefit to help provide food over the summer when meals at schools are not readily available to those families. And that, again, is something that child nutrition advocates have been asking for quite some years. And we've now come to the point where there seems to be the political will to bring this into policy. And so this is something that we're pressing for very strongly with both our US House members and our senators.
Yeah. And I know that the work that you do really in bringing attention to hunger, I want to take a moment just to focus for a minute, on your anti-hunger prioritization, because it's important that nobody be left hungry in a time like this. Nobody will be hungry left at all. But unfortunately, when we look across America, and particularly here in New York State, there's so many people, and I think we talked about children. It's been proven that, that sometimes the best meals that children get during the course of the day is what they get at school. And so share with us a little bit about the anti-hunger priorities that you've been working with.
Thank you. Yes, you said it quite right. And access to healthy meals at school really is a matter of equity, and it is a matter of providing every student with the same benefits and the same abilities to succeed in school, without making that success contingent on whether their family has the means to support access to those meals in school for a cost. So one of the number one priorities that we're working on is access to free and reduced price school meals for all children statewide. And whether we accomplish that through federal legislation or through legislation at the state level, in the absence of federal action, that is something that we think is just a very pressing need right now in our state for all children. There's so many children that fall through the cracks and cannot get free meals at school, but yet are definitely in need. And we think that that is one of the best ways that we can try and shore up food insecurity among children, which really is a way to bring so many families, sort of above this existence in poverty, and give them a chance to have children who have access to healthy food on a regular basis, and who really can survive and thrive in school, which, as we all know, is going to set them up for future success in their life. So that's one of the ways that our child nutrition prioritization is focused. But I do want to turn just for a moment over to the SNAP program, because some folks may not realize, but SNAP is actually the largest nutrition assistance program in New York State. Over 2.5 million people participate in the SNAP program, and they receive benefits each month on a benefit card that they can use to buy food at local participating retailers. We did see quite an influx of new SNAP recipients during the pandemic, as you might imagine. As people's income went down or went away, they became eligible for the program and used that program to provide food for themselves and their families. Now, during the pandemic, the SNAP program provided extra benefits for all who were enrolled in the program. And that has helped many households maintain access to food when they may have otherwise had to have made terrible decisions between buying food and perhaps paying for medication or other necessities. But those emergency benefits are scheduled to go away at some point in the near future, and that will create a situation where those households will revert back to the lower benefit levels that they received during the pandemic, when they may not be fully recovered financially from what the pandemic has done to themselves and their households. So we are trying to advocate for a way to make sure that those households have a little bit more of a seamless transition or an easier transition for those, what's called a benefit cliff, so that they just don't sort of fall quickly into a place where there's not sufficient funds to buy food for themselves and their families. And there's a couple of ways to, sort of address this through benefit, through the benefit formula for the SNAP program, but we are trying to think of ways and help with policy solutions to help make sure that people don't have this, pretty dramatic impact on their food benefits hit them, rather unexpectedly. So that is another way that we're trying to focus our energy and our priority on the SNAP program. And there's one other program that I'd like to mention as well, and that is the Wic program. And as you may know, Wic is a program that provides not only food benefits, but healthcare services, breastfeeding support, and other healthcare referrals for all families who are eligible. And in order to be eligible for a WIC, in addition to meeting income guidelines, WIC is for women who are pregnant or have infants or children up to the age of 5 at home. And those families can receive the benefits that the program offers, as well as a lot of support and a lot of extra help meeting the nutritional needs for those young children in the home. And we know that when children's nutritional needs are supported in their earliest years of life, they are the most likely to not only succeed in school, but to flourish beyond school as well. So those critical years of age 0 to 5 are really, really important to make sure the nutritional needs are met. So our organization is working with the New York State Department of Health to do some more outreach and some enhanced education to help make sure that people know that they're eligible for WIC and how to access the program, because only about half of all eligible people in New York State are enrolled in the WIC program. So there's tens of thousands of families who could be benefiting from the WIC program and are not. And we'd like to help break those stigmas and help bring people closer to that program.
You mentioned about being eligible for WIC, and you just jumped off into that. I was going to go back and ask the question about SNAP, because what are the SNAP eligibility requirements?
Sure. So the eligibility requirements basically mean that a household and all of the people in the household who are eligible for the program need to meet an income test. And those income tests are slightly different depending on the circumstances of the household and who is in the household, but it's usually anywhere between 150 and 200% of the poverty level. And so if there are senior citizens or children that live in the household, or households that have a lot of childcare expenses, those income limits are a little bit more generous to allow for that. And a household also has to meet citizenship and residency requirements as well. And then once they are approved in their application, they would receive a benefit card that would put those benefits into their hands each month that they can use at approved retailers to buy food, just like they would with a debit card.
Yeah. And then also when it comes to WIC, what are the eligibility requirements there?
So for the WIC program, again, families need to meet an income test, and their income just needs to be below a certain threshold in order to be eligible. They also would need to make sure that the people who would be eligible for benefits have to meet the definition of who's eligible, which is a pregnant woman or a mother who is breastfeeding a child. And then infants up to the age of 1, and then additional children in the house up to the age of 5. So those individuals are eligible for the benefits in the program. But it's important to point out that if there's, say, a grandparent or a father who is the primary caregiver for those children, they can apply for WIC benefits for the children and receive those benefits and be the conduit for those. So not just moms can apply, any guardian or caregiver can apply for the children that they're caring for. And the WIC program, once they meet the income guidelines and make sure that all in the family are eligible, there's some nutritional guidance that's given, and there's a nutritional assessment done to make sure that the benefits meet the unique nutritional needs of the individuals in that family.
Yeah. So before we go, how do people find out more about the work that you guys are doing?
Well, thank you for asking. So The best way that people can find out about the work that we do is to visit our website, which is hungersolutionsny.org. But I'd also like to put a plug in for a special website that we run, which is called foodhelpny.org. And if anyone is interested in getting help directly with SNAP or WIC, we have a network of partners all across the state that will work one-on-one with clients on their applications. So Food Help NY, you just put in where you live and you can find the closest coordinator near you who can help you with a SNAP application and answer any questions you may have.
Sherry Tomasky, thank you so much for being with us and the work that's going on at Hunger Solutions. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
All righty, and we'll definitely try to check back with you in the new year, God willing.